Alrighty, so yesterday we did a live stream and we watched, content from all of the JP, KR, YouTubers and everything for Grand Cross, and I wanted to see whether or not the characters looked good outside of the, JP live stream showcase, because they're not normally known for doing a very good job of showing off new units. So we obviously have a new collab coming up. If you're not aware, Mushoku Tensei is getting a collab with Grand Cross, and there are 4 new characters, which is kind of scary because, getting new characters can be kind of a pain, and going to the 600 mark to make sure that you get all of these characters could be a real diamond sink, I guess. But I wanted to talk about each of the characters and sort of the experience that I had sort of watching the gameplay. So I don't know, obviously, don't take this at like face value or anything like that. I'm definitely going to I don't know if I'll do another one like this or not, but I do want to sort of follow up with this video once they come out on global and I've had a chance to actually test them out myself, because obviously it's different from, what you get to see on YouTube. A lot of people cater content towards, big damage, they cut out matches where they lose, whatever the case may be, and I'm not knocking anybody for doing that. It does make for a more entertaining video to do that, of course, but it doesn't really show both sides of the coin. I try to keep my showcases as, I don't know, realistic as possible, but sometimes just luck of the draw. The matches that I get could be bots, they could be, bad players, they could be whales, and I get completely stomped on whenever the character actually is good. So, take some of this with a grain of salt. But either way, I wanted to talk about all 4 of the characters. We watched, I think it was 3 videos for Rudeus, we watched 1 video for Eris, and then I just watched Nagato's newest video because it came out today as of the time of me recording this. And we watched 2 Roxy videos and 2 Ghislaine videos. I know that Marilli has also put out another Ghislaine video today. I'll probably end up watching that at some point, but I feel like I already have a pretty decent impression of the characters, because they are the main 3 characters besides Eris. I've already gotten a pretty decent amount of showcases so far from the people that I watch. So Rudeus Grey Rat is the very first one. He's the main character of Mushoku Tensei, and honestly, he looks like he's probably going to end up being the best character of the entire collab. If you're not aware of what they do, for every human in battle, increases basic stats by 10%. Whenever a human ally uses a skill, apply 1 magic sphere on the hero, and then a magic sphere is going to be single target attack damage is a plus 20%, limit of 5 times, which is pretty strong. And then removes all magic spheres whenever the hero uses a single target attack skill. So basically the way that it works is you're going to be using AoEs and other character cards, so that way you can sort of build up these spheres on the character, so that way you can use the single target to just burst down whatever enemy you want. It's basically just like building up to shoot a huge attack at an enemy, and then it kind of resets. Almost kind of like Assault Mode Meliodas, or not Assault Mode Meliodas, kind of like Purgatory Meliodas, where, he gets attacked and he gains true magic, and then you use it and it goes away, and then you have to get attacked again, but instead you're the one building up the passive instead of the enemy dictating whether or not you get it or not. So I guess it's good in a way, but obviously there's some weird give and take there. So if the hero has 5 magic spheres, increases crit chance by 50%, and damage dealt is increased by an additional 30%. So it hits really, really hard when you get 5 stacks. A lot of people were interested to see if this character was going to work really well with the new Roxy that came out, Awakened Roxy, not the collab Roxy. Honestly, I don't think that it's really a good match, even though he is a human and you could potentially use his skill with Rudeus, or her passive with Rudeus. If he doesn't crit, he might not kill anyway, and then if he does crit, he's probably going to kill without her extra damage getting applied anyway, so she almost becomes like dead weight on the team if you use her. From what I've seen, I will definitely test that out again whenever I play, because I don't have, a crazy like 13 million box CC account or anything like that, compared to some of the JP YouTubers. So I'll definitely test it out a little bit more whenever I have more hands-on feel there. But from what I watched, it seemed like Roxy wasn't a great match for the character. His Holy Relic is for every magic sphere on the hero increases attack-related stats by 5%, so you just get more damage. He has an AoE Infect card, so that way you can kind of build up his spheres, and it's just a nice... honestly, Infect is a really helpful card nowadays, and he has a single-target Flood card. So I'm not a huge fan of Flood cards nowadays, because after you take a little bit of damage, they hit way less hard, and so I don't know, I'm kind of biased towards the Flood cards nowadays, but either way, it does hit really, really hard, and his ultimate is basically going to wipe with apply 1 magic sphere, and for every magic sphere increases damage by 30% and inflicts damage equal to 350% of attack on all enemies. That is at level 1, and it goes up to applying 3 magic spheres at level 6 with, just more damage, 525%. Luckily, the increased damage by 30% per magic sphere does not scale, so it's just a flat-out increase. So if you've already built up a really good amount of his passive, you can just use the ultimate, and it's pretty much going to one-shot anyway, whereas, if you don't have a whole lot of stacks of his passive, having the 6/6 is going to be way more helpful, because then you're going to probably gain at least a minimum of 3 just by using it straight out with no passive stacks, already applied. But it seems really strong, honestly. I don't think you necessarily have to have him 6/6. If this scaled where it wasn't 30% per orb, then I would say you maybe would have to go for a 6/6, but I don't know. We'll kind of have to test that out, of course. I'm only planning on doing 1 rotation, so we'll see how lucky I get with the characters. I say 1 rotation, but I need to get at least 1 copy of each character, really. But yeah, Rudeus seems to be the strongest out of the whole lineup so far, so I definitely recommend, if you're going to summon, definitely try to prioritize getting him at least. If you're not interested in the collab, I know a lot of people are planning on skipping, saving for anniversary, completely understandable, but I don't know, it might be useful to have a copy of this character in the future, and not only because of that, but Eris is the free unit that comes with the collab, and unfortunately they have destroyed her for some reason. They have just absolutely just pigeonholed her into the ground by making it to where her holy relic doesn't even work if you don't have Rudeus, so you basically have to summon for him if you want to use her at full potential, and she doesn't work in anything other than, just regular PvE content. You can't use her in demonic beast battles, you can't use her in actually, I think that's just it. I think it's kind of like Kizuna. You can't use her in demonic beast battle, you can't use her in PvP. She is a PvE exclusive character, which is very unfortunate, because honestly, if you're not doing the demonic beast content, most of the regular content in the game is not very hard. You don't really need this character to do much for you, but hey, I guess if you're like getting into the game, you're brand new, she'll honestly probably be halfway decent just in the very beginning. Unfortunately, her passive, does restrict her a bit, so it's for every applicable ally, and then the applicable allies in this sense are strength-based humans, so they have to be red attribute humans, which is very restrictive. I'm not sure why they're trying to really hold all these characters down into a specific set, but that seems to be more of a trend lately that they're doing. But she increases in applicable allies attack related stats by 10% and increases single target damage by 15%. So she's just a buffer for PvE activities. You could probably use her on final bosses whenever those come around, event bosses whenever those come around. She's really good for the new event boss for the Mushoku Tensei collab, of course, because why wouldn't she be? But I've seen people use her in OG Demon. She's very lackluster. Do not recommend doing that. So please God, I already know that as soon as she comes out, people are going to be trying to run her on OG. I'm gonna tell you, I'm not inviting you if you're using Eris. I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna suffer through that. So don't use her on OG Demon. I highly recommend against it. She has a single target sever skill and a single target. No, this is an AOE skill where on level 2 it removes buffs. On level 3 it removes buffs and stances. Really mediocre card, to be honest. This one at least. Flood card ultimate, which is fine, I guess, but overall she's very lackluster, not great. Her holy relic is for every magic sphere on Rudeus. Increases applicable allies damage dealt by 10%. So it's just more buffing, but you have to pull for Rudeus if you want her to work. So that's kind of why I would recommend you grab at least 1 copy of Rudeus if you're planning on summoning anyway. If not, you can probably just let this character collect dust in your box, I guess, because honestly, she's not going to be any more helpful than if you already have Kizuna or any other halfway decent PvE character, to be honest. So Roxy's a very interesting one. I was super interested to see how she was going to turn out. I wasn't incredibly impressed. I think that her shield has a decent amount of uses, but there's not been a whole lot of experimenting yet. Somebody, whenever we were watching videos in my live stream, was saying that you could potentially try to use her with Summer Merlin, and so that way they can't attack, they can't break the shield, so that way you gain more stats, because the way that her passive works is, at the start of the battle, apply a shield equal to 200% of the hero's attack, which, by the way, is not very much, on unknown allies, so she's an unknown support unit. Apply the same effect at the start of the ally's turn again, if at the start of the ally's turn and the shield is not removed, increases allies' attack-related stats by 20% for 1 turn. So that's a pretty decent little damage boost, but obviously it's not hard to break the shield, so people were saying you could potentially try to attack seal and then just kind of, you know, gain the attack buff and then go in for big damage, I guess, after that, which definitely sounds like a more interesting strategy. She seems a little bit more passive as far as the unknown team goes, whereas the newer character Ghislaine is more offensive, of course. So I think that she might be better for a lot of people because people like faster sort of gameplay a lot of the time when it comes to PvP. Her Holy Relic is decreases damage taken by allies with the hero's shield, so just a little bit of damage reduction, which is nice. She has a single target deplete card, which I typically like deplete cards more than dissolve cards just because you don't have to be as proactive with it, but I don't know, just personal preference, really. She has an AoE Pierce card, which didn't really seem like it was doing the greatest damage whenever we were watching the showcases, but then again, she seems to be way more supporty. You're probably going to be using her to buff your unknown allies anyway, so maybe not the greatest card, but it'll do a decent little chunk of damage, I guess, when you use it. Her ultimate is very interesting, with decreases all stats except for basic stats by 30% at level 1 for 2 turns and inflicts damage equal to 450% to all enemies. So, it's an AoE card, and it just basically decreases all substats, and it scales ridiculously. So at level 1, it's 30%, which isn't anything crazy. That'll probably make you miss a crit or two. But at level 6, it is 160%. And that is absolutely absurd, because even if you look at her stats, it would basically bring every single one of her substats down to 0, except for her crit damage, and she would have 20% left. So, obviously this is at level 1 base stats, so obviously it'll scale, but that's a really big decrease. Obviously, the downside to that is Mael gives stat lower immunity to all of his allies if they're angels, so you don't really even have to worry about it if you're running the goddess team, and Escanor can also not be lowered as well. So if you're going up against the human team, it would affect your, you know, his allies, but Escanor can't be lowered, so it's not like the biggest deal in the world. I think really what they're trying to do here is make Demon Team have a bit of a harder time in the meta, try to force people into using a couple of different teams because the demons are really strong at the moment. But honestly, unless you're ult rushing, odds of you getting this off quickly is probably pretty slim, and even then, like I said, the shield isn't super crazy, so unless you're attack sealing, the Demon Team's probably just going to run this woman over. Anyway, so yeah, Ghislaine is the last one. I think she is the other one worth getting. I think if you're going to go for any characters, Rudeus is by far the best. Ghislaine is second best in my opinion. Then it would probably be Roxy, and then it would be Eris because she's free anyway. Ghislaine just seems really strong. She just has a lot of really good damage for the unknown team. She is also an unknown team sort of locked unit, so her passive is for every unknown ally participating in PvP only, so you can't use her in PvE, unfortunately. Increases the hero's basic stats by 7%, which is pretty decent. That's a 21% increase with 3 allies on the field. At the start of the battle, mark the enemy with the highest combat class, which is very interesting. It's kind of like Galen's Coerce, but instead of it being random and just choosing any, you know, enemy on the field, it's going to be the highest combat class, which normally ends up being Escanor, Mael, or Purgatory Meliodas. The only problem with that is 2 of those characters can't be stat lowered, so that is pretty unfortunate because it does lower some stats later on, but it's also going to increase the damage that you deal to that character, so it kind of has its workarounds. It's going to really nerf Melee whenever he tries to attack you, compared to the other ones who can't be stat lowered, but the marked enemy can only attack Ghislaine, so honestly, I don't know how well that's going to play out, because having the highest CC character, which is normally the hardest hitting character, only be able to attack your big damage dealer here sounds bad on paper, to be honest. It sounds like it's going to be a bad time because she's going to get killed, but when attacking the marked target, increases the hero's damage by 40%, and when attacked by the marked target, decreases the enemy's attack-related stats by 30%. So if they can be stat lowered, you're basically just going to make it to where they can't crit you as hard, they can't crit as often, the pierce rate goes down as well, so it's not going to hit as hard regularly, and their attack as well is going to be lowered. So, pretty strong passive, I would say. I think it's pretty cool. It might be a little finicky with certain units, of course, but I think it's still pretty strong. The single target pierce card hits really hard. It has this like weird thing where, you know, sometimes animations do like one hit per like, it'll do one damage number per hit or whatever in the actual skill animation. Hers is like the first hit doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and then it does a huge amount of damage afterwards. So it almost looks like you're not hitting hard, and then it just does like a huge chunk of damage, which is bizarre to look at sometimes, but obviously you're still getting the damage off with the card, so that's obviously very good. The Pierce card seems to be top-notch, very, very nice. Really quickly, the Holy Relic as well is every time the hero uses a single target skill, which both of her cards are single target, increases single target attack skills damage by 20%. So it's a limit of 3, so you can basically just use 3 cards. You now have a 60% damage increase, which is pretty crazy, on top of the 40% damage increase if you're fighting the marked target. So that's a lot of extra damage, so that's really, really nice. He also has a cancel stance card, which is pretty strong considering that a lot of the teams nowadays have some sort of stance on. I know the Angel team normally opts for more of a Goddess Liz type nowadays, but if you were to go up against like the Green Sariel variant, for example, or if you're going against, you know, the Demon team with Chandler, you can cancel those stances and get straight to the damage dealer. So I think that that's really strong. I think that's really nice in the meta right now. Every once in a while I'll fight a team that has Deanne with Escanor or something like that, so you could get through the Deanne. She also has a Power Strike AoE ultimate, which is incredibly strong. Last time we had a character like this was Terry Bogard from the KOF collab, and it was an ultimate that everybody was looking for because it was incredibly strong. So honestly, I think the collab is still pretty cool. I know a lot of people are kind of controversial about it. Some people are really just not into it. I completely understand. If you don't like the show, you don't like the anime, whatever the case may be, you have no attachment to the show, feel free to do whatever you want to do. I still think that the characters are very interesting. Ghislaine, definitely a good character. Rudeus, definitely a good character. Roxy might be good depending on the team that you can come up for her. And then Eris is honestly pretty mediocre, but you know, she's cool as a character, I guess, if that's what you're looking for, but usability wise, pretty low. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions of the collab are down below. I don't really have anything else to go over. Like I said, I'm definitely going to be planning on showcasing the units, probably a little bit more like free to play first whenever they come out on Global. I'm going to try them all out without their costumes just to see how it goes. So that way you can determine whether or not you have to have the paid cosmetics for the characters whenever they come out. And then later on, I think I have it lined up to where I could potentially test them out on a whale account with really high box CC and everything. So that way you could potentially see them at their, you know, peak performance. So yeah, I guess stay tuned for that if you're really interested in seeing how the collab characters do. But yeah, I don't know, upload every day. So if you're new to the channel or anything and you want to stick around, feel free to, of course. But yeah, that's basically it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one.